Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Survivor Torch Snuffers Aftershow. My name is Elise Anderson, and today we're going to be breaking down what went wrong for the fourth contestant voted out of Survivor Game Changers. Tonight, I am joined by Torch Snuffers panelist Ty. Ty, how are you?
Good evening. Except it's not a good evening because I'm not good because I'm devastated by what happened last night.
You and me both. As well,
I know.
I invite two special guests today. We have Cody and the confusingly named Tyler. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good right now. That was
Welcome to the show to have you on. Unfortunately, it is not all sunshine and roses this week, as my winner pick, Malcolm Freeberg, was eliminated through bullshit this episode of Survivor. So, before we go into that, I would like to first take time to break down his game in his previous seasons. We've seen him twice before, once in Survivor Philippines and once in Survivor Caramoan. So I'll just start. Malcolm is, no surprise, one of my favorite players of the new era of Survivor. I absolutely loved Survivor Philippines, and he had a lot to do with that. He was set on the shittiest tribe of all time, maybe, of the Metsing tribe, which basically just lost absolutely everything, with only Malcolm and Denise, the winner of Survivor Philippines, making it to the swap and to the merge. Then he and Denise were able to kind of play both sides. Malcolm ultimately is a favorite to win, but gets knocked out at Final Four after he loses the challenge, and then Denise wins, his closest ally. Any thoughts on Malcolm's Philippines game? Ty, were you a fan of Malcolm 1.0?
Very much so. Malcolm was a great character. He's a fun guy. He's a nice guy. He's likable. There's a reason that they had to vote him out at the end, even though Denise and him obviously were inseparable for much of the game. He was also much younger then. So to that end, like, he didn't maybe know to tone down just how, like, awesome he was to, like, maybe turn down the threat level so that he didn't get knifed at the end. But it would have been hard because you had Lisa Whelchel, who just kept talking about how she was a child star, and you had Artis's trigger word, who was abjectly terrible in every way, shape, and form. Love Artis, he's a friend of the show. I mean, he showed he had the chops in his season, and was obviously somebody who we brought back in future seasons because of, you know, the skills that he showed and the personality that he showed.
Cody and Tyler, what did you think of Malcolm Philippines era?
Okay. I'd say, like, the main thing is, like, because we've been talking a lot of his positive, I would say his biggest issue is just him as far as being a physical threat. There weren't a ton of physical threats in Philippines, so he was able to show that well. But I feel like that and his likability is what ultimately screwed him over, and as far as that specific games goes, and why he got fourth instead of potentially final three.
And, like, props to him. If I were Malcolm going into a Final Four with Lisa Whelchel, who shall not be named, and Denise, I would think Denise being my only real competitor in that final challenge. And he won, like, the second final challenge to win the advantage for the final challenge. It just happened to be something that he was absolutely awful at, the one thing that he couldn't do. So can't fault him too much for that, though. I suppose, like, is there anything you guys think he could have done? I know, Ty, you mentioned he should have lowered his threat level a little bit, but
he probably should have gotten a haircut, because if his hair wasn't so magical and long and bewitching, then maybe people would have taken him to the end, because there was no way with his amazing locks, like, blowing in the wind of Final Tribal Council, that, like, he was just too much of a threat.
I think that's how he convinces people to keep him. It's like,
That's
Final
true.
Four, you can't get rid of me, hair flip.
He may not have won the game, but he definitely won your heart with his amazing hair, and I think that's
He
the
did.
reward. That is
And the hearts
reward.
of many, as he was brought back next season. He was one of the few people who have done the back-to-back Survivor seasons. He basically had, like, a couple weeks to turn around and go back out there and play fans versus favorites. Now, admittedly, I have blocked most of fans versus favorites too out of my mind. So, however, he basically laid low. He was part of the Philip Shepard Stealth Are Us thing, but he eventually broke off because he joined, was it the Three Amigos? That was their name? I don't know, the Dude Bro faction, where he basically led Eddie Fox, dog bar extraordinaire, and Reynolds, that was his name? I can't remember.
Yes.
Yeah, so he led the Dude Bros around, and he convinced Reynolds to give him an idol, which was crazy. In the hold up bro moment, he was basically the only source of drama for most of the post-merge, as the rest of it was just Cochran running to the end. He eventually does get taken out because he was obviously the biggest threat in the opposition. But I mean, I would have voted for the guy who was going to build a dog bar, but I don't know about you guys. So, Cody and Tyler, we'll start with you. Any thoughts on his Karamoan game? He did go a lot earlier than he had in Philippines.
There's really not much he could have done around the time that he left because, I mean, he made a great move with the second idol play. Like, that's probably going down as one of the best moves made, but that's literally why he left the next round. Doing that made him even a bigger threat. He already had the big threat of being a physical player, but making that big move and him being idoless kind of just screwed him. And especially in that auction when he bought the idol clue that everybody knew about. Like, because you saw, like, I forget who it was. I think it was Andrea who stayed up the entire night just so he wouldn't get the idol.
Yeah, Andrea, another game changer on this season. We never got to see that reunion.
But that's like what I think showed that he was a threat. The fact that they had someone stay up all night so that he wouldn't get the idol.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's anything else he could have done. He was just the biggest threat at that point, and I don't know. I just think at this point Malcolm is just known to be a threat. I don't think he could have done anything else.
I think he basically played the best he could have post-merge, given what he was given after Corinne was voted out. Ty, any thoughts on Malcolm's pre-merge, post-merge Karamoan game?
If Malcolm had any weaknesses in Karamoan, I would say, and this may tie into something we discuss later, he trusted maybe his main alliance in the wrong person. He trusted Corinne, and while Malcolm is a good player and is a good likable player, Corinne maybe isn't. And to that end, like when she was looking to make moves against the Stealth R Us and eventually Cochran, because let's face it, Cochran was running that alliance because Philip Shepard doesn't have a brain. Like when you break all of that down, maybe he should have not put so many eggs in her basket, because it did lead with the Dude Bros, and there was just so much muscle there that it was impossible for them to all make it through, and they all got picked off by Cochran. Also, he had his big move getting rid of Philip Shepard, which, well, I was literally not able to stand afterwards because it was so exciting to watch, and I, like, couldn't fight off the delirium of Philip Shepard being gone. Like, was Philip Shepard really the biggest threat because he was such a terrible player? Like, could he have gone for somebody else? I can't remember who was immune that round, if Cochran was immune that round, but he could have
That was Reynolds immune that round?
Yeah, because he had the two idols. And
Right. Why didn't they vote out Cochran that round? That would have been a thing to do. Like, if you really wanted to change the season, that's probably what you do with that vote, other than the fact that Shepard was so terrible.
I know at the time what his idea was Philip Shepard was running the show, which, as everyone knows, wasn't the case, because we all know who really was running the show. But as far as Malcolm's position, I don't think he felt secure with Cochran's alliance, because we all know that Cochran wanted to get him out at some point. So he basically just went to the only people that he could at that point. And I feel, as far as his position and who was playing, his best bet as far as surviving that round would have been to take out Cochran the round before.
I also think part of it is that they didn't really want to actually play the idols when Philip went home, because I think they were thinking that maybe one of them would flip and be like, okay, I don't want to go to Rocks or force anything. I'll just, instead of voting them, I'm going to just vote Philip. I think they were looking for people to vote Philip, hence why they announced it beforehand as opposed to just playing the idols afterwards.
Good point.
They ended up having to anyway, but I can see why that... I can see your point that they should have gotten rid of Cochran, but at the same time, I can see why they didn't aim for him there.
That's true.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Well, you brought up a good point, Ty, in that we're going to talk about this for this season as well, but I feel like Malcolm's the type of player who is friendly with almost everyone and keeps his options open. We saw in Philippines, he and Denise worked with a lot of different groups, and they were able to do this because they were put on opposite tribes, they got together after the merge, and they had connections all over the place, and both of them are very likable people, and were able to work, like, voting blocks or whatever. They were able to change allies when it suited them. In Karamoan, he kind of got caught doing the same thing because he was like, well, I'm part of this Philip Shepard thing, but I'm also with Corinne, and I'm also hanging out with the Dude Bros. And I think it gets him in trouble because people, like, it's a great gameplay, but people recognize that. And it does put a big target on his back. And as I mentioned, any thoughts about him being a back-to-back player? He didn't really have time to learn from his mistakes in Philippines.
I completely agree with the fact that he didn't have a chance to nuance his game at all. And he was also much younger. Like, that was, what, 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. Which is part of the reason I thought he was going to do so well this time, because he was a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and I thought like he would be able to maybe nuance it a little bit better.
Oh, that's why I chose him as my winner pick. I'm like, yes, Malcolm's got this now. Nope.
Sure. Also, there were so many other big characters besides him that I thought maybe he would not stick out compared to a 2-time winner. But
yeah. Cody and Tyler, any thoughts on either back-to-back Malcolm or his pregame shot at this season?
Being back-to-back, I think it actually worked to your advantage because people don't really know what kind of game you played. So you're kind of, in their eyes, you're a new player. So they don't know what to expect. So if you can work around that and you can actually, like, you know, convince these people, like, I'm no threat because they don't know what kind of game you're playing, then it can work. And I think in Karamoan, I think Malcolm worked at it, you know, in his favor, but the merge was just messy. That's the best word I could put.
I do also think, as far as, like, we can kind of segue this into this season, but, like, we saw his first 2 seasons, he was able to get reasonably far just because people didn't know his style of game. Once he entered this season, everyone knew his game. He was socially likable. He was a physical threat. And they knew that there were some points, especially with the double idol play, that he was able to be strategic when need be. So everyone knew that he was a triple threat going into it, whereas in the other 2 seasons, they had to figure that out. So I think that just coming to where everyone knew his game, that's also, like, even though he did mature, as Ty already said, it also hurt that everyone knew what his game was already like.
Very true.
Yeah, though I do have to give him credit in Karamoan. Like, previously, the last person to go back to back, and they didn't know who it was Russell Hantz, which ended up being a disaster for everyone involved. So good for him for kind of shaking off any idea that he'd come up and be some sort of crazy villain and not get voted out first on that favorites tribe. Even though Francesca might have appreciated that, it didn't happen. So props to Malcolm for that. But yeah, no, going on to this season, like Ty said, I chose Malcolm as my winner pick because I'm like, okay, he's a triple threat. He's not like a Joe who, you know, is going to come in there and make himself a huge target because he can't help himself, but like just go for all these immunities and then like screw up strategically. Like, he does have the smarts to back it up, but he's a little bit wiser. He'll be a little bit less reckless. I think he's learned from his mistakes. As much as people now know what he's like, he's also had time to reflect on what his previous games were. And then he ends up going pre-merge through absolute bullshit. But first, as the great Julie Chen does say, yeah, he started out on the Mana tribe, which was an absolute disaster. Like, they were losing everything. Shades of Matt Singh, like you could tell, even though he nearly won it for his tribe multiple times, just being the one good person at these challenges, especially when the other tribes were just like even more so stacked than they were, they ended up losing. He managed to survive 2 tribal councils, the first being the Sierra boot, where they got rid of her. I think he probably had a lot to do with that. You can check out our Sierra podcast. Then there was the Tony vote, where Tony was the biggest threat. He was kind of working with Tony, but he just, like, I don't know, decided to vote him out because it was between Tony and Sandra. Thoughts on his time on Mana this episode of the game?
I thought through the 2 weeks prior to this week that he was playing a great game and that he was well connected. You constantly saw people coming to him with things. When Troyzan caught Tony in episode 1, who was he talking with? Malcolm. Malcolm was basically a linchpin of both the Sandra plan to get rid of Tony and the Tony plan to get rid of Sandra. He was well connected. Barner found him valuable. Caleb found him valuable. He was making jokes with Haley about how Ozzy was being Ozzy by super swimming, like right off the boat, off the bat. Like he looked to be in a really good position.
He was a narrator role in terms of the edit as well.
Which sometimes indicates that he's not going to win, which maybe I should have been forewarned by, but I wasn't.
Don't really have that much that'll like really add to it. If anything, like everyone knew his game going into it with being good at challenges, so that probably did help him out a lot.
Yeah, he was their only shot at winning a lot of times, so I can see why they wouldn't want to vote him out. He gets the swap, and then he's still with all these people that he knew previously. He has clearly a good bond with JT, so he was playing, like, everyone liked him again. He was killing it at the challenges. He single-handedly, like, won the reward challenge for him this episode. So things are going great.
Completely agreed. I mean, everything was going really well until the Brandon Clark twist, until CYS became Survivor for an episode.
This is different, but like I was surprised because someone in Torch Snuffers, Alex, pointed out that this hadn't happened in Survivor before, and I was like, really? Frickin' org ever existing.
I don't know, like we were actually watching the episode and we were trying to figure out like what was gonna happen, and like I'd say like 5-10 minutes before it, I was like, this is gonna be a combined tribal council, and he was saying bullshit to what I said.
I just didn't think.
I was with Tyler. I was like, bullshit. This is gonna be a tribal council.
And then what do you know? Boom! Brandon Clark twist, as we said, happened, and well. We all know the results now, but at the time it was just like an insane moment of everyone being shocked, us being like, thank God we only lose one person instead of 2, because if we lost 2, I'd probably like start crying. Because
at the same time, I mean, we could have lost Queen Sandra, but we could have easily lost JT and like Haley. I would be less sad if
we lost Sierra without JT.
That's true. That's true. So basically what happened is they get this twist, they both lost, you're going to tribal together, and they didn't go together back to one beach. They were still at separate beaches.
Yep.
What did you think about that, Ty? Like, they're not even allowed to talk to each other until tribal council happens.
It builds suspense. I realized, and like some people pointed this out to me after my initial rage of yesterday, full disclosure, I was not pleased with Ty conveniently being able to find an idol somewhere other than where the challenges were, where Troyzan found his. It seemed a little convenient that he was just like, oh, I'm the guy who finds idols in cute little ways. Time for me to go find a cute little idol because my tribe has 5 and the other tribe has 6. We need to make this interesting somehow. And like, to that end, I was not super happy with it. They said, apparently Probst did a bunch of pregame stuff about how this was going to be their plan with the idols all along. I don't know that I buy that at all. It seems like a convenient thing to say when you're marketing your season, but in any case,
I thought that was so unfair because Troyzan has to take it in front of the entire tribe, not even his tribe, but all the tribes at the challenge. He has to sneak it, and it's super suspenseful. It's great TV. And then you have Ty. It's like, oh yeah, just dig under your flag. It'll be fine. Cody and Tyler, I see you guys nodding and shaking your head about that.
You want to go first?
It's bullshit. Let's just put it like that. Like,
yeah, it is.
I kind of thought maybe it was because it was after the challenge, but then I'm just looking back on it. I'm like, this still is fair. Like, I don't see the logic in it, and I agree with you, Ty. I don't think it was like pre-planned or anything. I think it's bullshit. I think they were just setting it up to have them have an advantage, because I thought it was interesting that they, were talking in their own tribes. But I mean, it's kind of like setting it up to be like, oh yeah, it's just going to be 6-5. So let's put an idol in there to make it interesting. I think it's boring.
And I do,
Like-
yeah, no, I agree with you. And I do think possible that the whole reason they switched it to Malcolm, because originally they're going with Sandra because JT had a better chance of flipping to Sandra. But as soon as they find the idol, they're like, well, might as well go for Malcolm. He's the biggest threat. Cody, what did you want to say?
I know. I was gonna say, like, I think that as far as CBS trying to do that, that was their way of trying to balance it out. Whether that came off as that or not, I don't feel it did. It did come off as bullshit. Just because it was like one of them, it's like find a way to do it during a challenge, and the other was, oh look, just do it around your tribe, where they're already trying to work together to find it because they want all of them to stay. So I mean, like, I think that CBS was trying to balance it out, but the way that they did it just came off as a little bit messy.
Well, here's a thought. What would you have done if it was like you can find it at tribal council under this stool or like at this torch or I don't know, something.
That would have been
would have been
worse.
interesting. Just try doing it like in the voting booth somewhere.
Oh yeah. I guess that's not public
would've
though.
been
Maybe
fun.
it'd be like in Jeff Probst's left pocket. You have to find it.
You have to go give Probst a hug before tribal council starts. Oh god.
At least that
You're
would
walking
have
in, you
been.
just randomly accost him and dry hump him, like, oh my. Which, to be fair, is a thing that Probst would probably want from Brad Culpepper or from several of them. So to that end,
Oh my god.
I feel like this is a thing that should be done. But I don't know.
At
What
least
irritated
then
me
it's
most?
out in the open as opposed to like if after watching this it's like, well, I'm not gonna look for the idol until after you get back from the challenge because that's when it'll be easier to find.
Exactly. Like, what irritated me most about it was the fact that they still would have had a dramatic tribal council anyway, because you had Haley clearly at the bottom and JT clearly at the bottom. You still would have had some craziness regardless of this manufactured idol business. And I think somebody far less important than Sandra or Malcolm. I won't go too much into that yet because we do want to talk about something else besides bullshit, probably as a reason that Malcolm went home. So I won't spoil too much. But anyway, like, that pissed me off most of all. It still would have been dramatic either way.
Yeah, so far we have reasons why Malcolm went home. It was a double tribal council, he's a big threat, and bullshit idol powers. Let's talk about the actual tribal council itself, because it was crazy. And I get the feeling with the twist, with the drawing rocks this season, they really want to focus on having a lot more drama at tribal council, which is why I think they did this. It ended up all hell's breaking loose. I think it was JT starts by running to Brad Culpepper and out in the open and telling him that they're voting Sierra. Cody, Tyler, we'll start with you, then we'll go to Ty. I think we all have things to say about this.
That was worse than what he did in Heroes vs. Villains. If you thought that
Really?
couldn't have made a dumber move, he did it last night. Like, he's the reason why the idol got played on Sierra, because the whole time we were watching it, we were like, okay, what does Haley mean this entire time when she's like, okay, you're going to regret this vote, and why all of a sudden they changed it back to Malcolm and all this stuff, and why they still voted for Sierra. And it kind of like made us realize, okay, well, everyone's going to her and being like, oh no, they're going to stick with the plan. They're going to vote for Sierra, which I don't think they showed it, but I think Sierra went to Haley and said, hey, they're voting for me, which is why she was like, okay, now let's just vote this way, because they were going to flip and vote for Brad. Like, I know that she wanted them to vote for Brad. And then when she heard, oh no, they're sticking to the plan, that's what I think screwed it up. And I think it all stems from JT because he made that move. So he's the reason why all this happened, and he lost his closest ally. So in retrospect, he's a fucking idiot.
I think just to kind of get a build on that, when he made that move to go over to Brad, I think he was trying to still play everyone's I'm your best friend card, which, yes, he's shown that he can do in Tokensheens, and then break it in Heroes versus Villains. But in this game, what he's trying to do is trying to have way too many close connections with way too many people. He's having super close connections with his new tribe, he's having it with his old tribe, and really he's just trying to be everyone's buddy while they're at a tribal council where an idol just got out his closest ally. So I guess in retrospect, the idea is just don't do anything crazy like that. And
I think in defense of JT, What I was thinking is he's probably like, well, this way, I'll vote Sierra with my tribe so they're happy with me. Worst case scenario, Sierra goes home. Otherwise, they play the idol on Sierra, and then Sandra goes home, which will be great for me. I'll switch things up. I'll still have Malcolm. But similarly to Heroes versus Villains, he's creating his own entire plan on information that he doesn't know is a thing or is legit. Ty.
Whole thing, like JT is not necessarily a bad player. He clearly has the right idea with things. The problem is that he has too many ideas. He strikes me as like I think of like, because I was raised on pro wrestling, terms of like this big muscled up like do-it-yourself guy who just has all this energy, runs around the ring and tires himself out and gets beat because he doesn't have a manager who is Stephen Fishbach out there being like, no, don't do that thing. Don't do that thing. No, you don't want to completely bromance out with Coach. We need to get rid of him at some point. Like he doesn't have Stephen Fishbach, who was like the nerd who like, I don't know. I feel like JT's problem is impulse control, and without a good second, he cannot control his impulse. And to that end, he's just like, oh, I can trust Brad and Malcolm. This will work out fine. And then it doesn't work out fine.
So is that just Malcolm's problem? Is he just let JT do this for him?
Malcolm's problem is not being more discerning of, like, I think he trusts a little bit too much, and he trusts that just because he's good with somebody will get him through. Whereas you need, like, you can have a lot of allies, but if you can't trust your allies to be competent, worse to have those allies because they will get you into trouble by proxy, and then who's the bigger threat? The idiots or you? You know, that's...
Yeah, like in fairness to Malcolm, I think JT was like legit with him. It's just JT did not execute this correctly. Cody and Tyler, is there anything Malcolm could have done at this tribal to like not get killed?
I mean,
Not really. I don't think so.
I think the only, I guess, realistic thing that wouldn't have happened would have been not voting Sierra, but that was always stemming from JT being like, I don't want to vote for Brad because I told Brad that he's good. Again, going back to I want to be everyone's best friend, which, you know, you kind of can't do in Survivor. So, I mean, the only thing I guess he could have done is maybe push for that harder, but I feel like JT is the main reason that Malcolm fell this round. Okay?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
The only suggestion I would have made, like, when they were all at the beach, before they get to tribal council, Sandra does this big speech about how she doesn't think anybody would use the idol on Sierra Dawn Thomas. And there was somebody else on that tribe who I would have been much more certain no one would waste their idol on. I love Crazy Debbie. She's from Reading, Pennsylvania, and that's not too far from me. No one on earth out there for Survivor Game Changers is going to waste their idol on her. Why in the fuck did they not come to terms with voting her out? Because if they would have done it, I think they would have gotten 6 strong because nobody would have cared all that much. JT would have saved his own skin. He would have saved Malcolm's skin. He could have lived to see another day as far as getting rid of Sandra. That was their mistake, and that's maybe not even Malcolm's, but Malcolm went home. So to that end, we have to attribute it to him.
Yeah, I don't really know how much he could have done because, and like any of the things, like I agree that's a good point. Debbie probably wouldn't have the idol played on her, but it's a lot in retrospect. At the moment, it's not a bad move to take out Sierra. It's not a bad move to be like, sure, Sandra, sure, JT, we'll compromise. I'm good with both of you. We'll get through to next week. And yeah, I'm curious. Now, I'd like to switch the conversation because I think we can all agree Malcolm didn't do that much wrong. It's not really his fault. Mostly bullshit powers and JT fucking up. But in terms of Survivor, I think they create all these twists because they're like, oh, it's going to be drama. But I feel like they got a lot of blowback on this one. I don't know if it's because of the twist itself or because Malcolm's such a popular player. Cody and Tyler, do you think the twist was good? Do you think the twist was bad? Would it have been better if like someone else went home because of it?
The twist itself, I think, is good TV because I was looking at what everyone had said afterwards. They were shocked, and I was still even shocked. Like, we had to watch it again just to see like what happened. I think that was the whole point of it, though, was the shock factor of all the fans. This definitely is the reason why people want to keep watching it, because of stuff like this, like twists like this. So I think in retrospect, it's good. In terms of the end results, I mean, I'm indifferent about the Malcolm going home. I mean, I'm kind of personally, I'm not a big Malcolm fan, so I'm okay with it, but
I feel like as far as the nuking tribe goes, Tyler already said how they made their mistakes, but I feel as far as Mana goes and how they voted, I think that that's the best possible move they could have made as far as who they wanted to target. Because at this point in the game, I still see them staying in tribes for at least 1 or 2 more rounds. We all know that they don't have a really physical player. Their best physical player right now is Brad Culpepper, where if one tribe has Malcolm and another tribe has Ozzy, they're probably going to go every single time unless there's no physical part of a challenge. They need a person, well, not a person, they need a tribe to be able to beat. And if they have Ozzy and Malcolm carrying their respective tribes, they're not going to be able to do well in challenges. So even though they did leave a 2-time player in, they got out someone who is a strategic threat, very likable, and their most dominant player in challenges. So as far as the Mana tribe goes, I feel that this was their best case scenario.
Yeah, I do see why they got rid of Malcolm. And again, that goes with a problem in his previous seasons, that he is such an obvious threat that they're like, well, obviously we're going to go towards Malcolm or 2-time winner. The thing about Sandra, though, is that she's like, once she makes the merge, is anyone going to get rid of her? Because it doesn't matter what she's doing, she's still gonna suck at the challenges. You know, you can beat her, and she has such a big target that you can get rid of her any round, to the point that she might just walk to the end again. Was this their only shot, Ty? I mean,
I'll say this: as far as it being a good move for Sierra to get rid of Malcolm, yes, because one, it's a move that she kind of spearheaded that Brad Culpepper maybe didn't spearhead. I think it was a terrible move for Brad Culpepper, because now JT won't trust Brad Culpepper. And if that tribe still wins and Mana keeps going to tribal council anyway, Brad Culpepper will probably get to the merge, but JT might get there too, and JT won't have loyalty to him anymore. And granted, we also saw the preview for next week. It sounds like, Brad Culpepper might be cutting Debbie from that, as far as him betraying Mana and keeping Haley for some stupid reason. I think this is the beginning of the downfall for Brad Culpepper.
and can I also point out another person that this was bullshit for? Ty. He found a fucking idol and then just gives it to Sierra for the one
Ty is
term.
not smart. I mean, it worked out okay for him. Let's put it this way: I think he would have been in a better position with Sierra gone. But I can understand the whole, you can't take that position unless he just hides the fact that he had an idol.
I think that he could have kept it for himself, but the issue is right when he told his tribe, I have an idol, he felt obligated to use it in some way, which, I mean, that was a mistake on his part.
I just think that Ty is the worst person to have possession of an idol, because he can't ever make a decision for himself. I feel like he always has to go to someone and be like, is this my best move? Should I play the idol in this person? He did it in his original season, constantly having to listen to other people being like, should I play it? Should I not play it? And he did the same thing tonight. He's looking at them like, okay, which one of you should I play it for? Like, trust your own instinct and just play it. Play it for yourself. Stop listening to other people, because that's why you lost the first time, because you didn't play for yourself, and that's what he's doing this time. And yeah, it was a great move for him because he played it on the right person, but it's like, trust yourself. Don't let somebody else make your decisions for you.
The fact that we're talking about all these other players just shows that it was basically just a perfect storm of just unluckiness, badly designed twists in terms of Malcolm's game. It all fell apart to means pretty much for the most part out of his control. So, any final thoughts on Ty? Yeah.
I think we'll see Malcolm back. I think it'll be a few seasons from now. I don't think that they can afford the PR hit of not bringing him back for a better send-off. Maybe he'll get the fourth time's a charm. Maybe he'll get like a Boston Rob season where they'll just give it to him by putting a bunch of idiots out there. Who knows? But he will be back. I would say give it 2 or 3 years, and we'll see him again.
Oh yeah, I think the only good thing, in my opinion, about this boot like this is the fact that we will probably be seeing him again. He was so robbed just by what happened that like we can't not bring him back. For now, we must stay in mourning for Malcolm Freeberg, 4th person eliminated from Survivor Game Changers. Thank you guys, Ty, Cody, and Tyler, for all coming on and joining me today. It was a lot of fun. Thank you all for watching, and have a good night.